Hello friends, I am glad to see you again. Today I will talk about the HOA that wants me to live in their community. The day I was told I wasn't allowed to live outside an HOA by an HOA I had never joined started with a stranger measuring my mailbox like it owed back rent. I was wrenched deep in my old pickup, trying to coax a grumpy alternator into one more season, when a stiff-haired woman in a linen blazer marched up my driveway with a clipboard. She didn't introduce herself, didn't wave, didn't even ask if I had a minute. She just squinted at my mailbox like it had insulted her and declared, "This unit is non-compliant." I wiped grease off my hands and blinked. Non-compliant with what? Gravity? She lifted her chin. With the design guidelines. You're in violation of the neutral color scheme, the decorative font, and the setback. You'll receive a formal notice. "I'm not in your HOA," I said, feeling the familiar twitch in my left eye that comes out when someone tries to sell me a warranty or a timeshare. The thought popped into my head. Maybe she was lost and thought my place belonged to their little subdivision down the road, the one with identical porches and identical dog statues and identical frowns. She smiled the kind of smile you practice in a mirror. "Oh, everyone in this neighborhood is part of the association. It's mandatory." At that exact moment, my shop radio squealed and fizzled, then landed on some talk show where a guy was yelling about property taxes. It felt like the universe was mixing the soundtrack to my headache. I pointed my wrench toward the street. "Ma'am, the boundary line is at the end of the cul-de-sac. I'm outside of your subdivision by about 3 acres and a creek. I know because I paid for a survey when I bought this place. You can't enforce anything here." Her smile didn't move. "We'll need to confirm your membership status. What's your last name?" I told her my first name was Sid and that she wasn't getting the second. For good measure, I added, "If you're handing me paperwork, I'll take it. If you're not, I've got a truck to fix." She missed the hint, the way some folks miss yield signs. "We'll be assessing a fine for non-compliance." "You do that," I said, and went back to the alternator. She stood there a full 30 seconds, letting her silence weigh on me. When it didn't, she made a note on her clipboard, pivoted, and marched off with the posture of someone who has never tripped in public. That should have been the end. It was not. I live on a weird little pocket of land that used to be part of an old farm. My driveway runs off a county road, and the nearest subdivision, let's call it Creekview, sprouted on the other side of the creek years after. Their entrance is 2 streets over. We share a school zone, a trash day, and nothing else. When I bought my property outright, the title company shoved a tower of paper at me, all of it confirming one blessed phrase: no recorded covenants, conditions, or restrictions. My favorite 4 words, just slightly ahead of paid in full. Creekview's HOA didn't exist when this parcel was platted. There's no annexation agreement, no shared amenities, no common area. I was as covered by their rules as a goose is by a raincoat. For the next week, though, small annoyances began to drip onto my life like a leaky faucet. Bright white envelopes with "urgent" in all caps appeared in my mailbox with no stamp, just a logo with a stylized oak leaf. Enclosed were printed fine notices for important sins. Mailbox color, apparently rust isn't neutral. A non-compliant truck parked in my driveway. If a 20-year-old pickup isn't a national treasure, I don't know what is. And the cardinal offense of my not having applied for a residence color variance when I painted my house an unapologetic shade of cheerful blue last spring. I ignored the notices because they were as legally forceful as a grocery list. I did, however, keep them in a folder. I kept the envelopes too. Their mistake, no postage, made them just interesting enough to archive. Then came Flyer Guy. He was young, nervous, and the exact kind of person who gets volunteered for door-to-door work by someone who outranks them at potlucks. He jogged up my walk one Saturday, wearing a polo with the same oak leaf logo, and tried to tape a laminated sign to my porch railing that said, "Reminder, dues delinquent." I stepped onto the porch with a cup of coffee and stared at the sign. "You trying to get me to decorate for a holiday I don't celebrate?" He flinched. "We're required to post notices for delinquent accounts." "You don't have an account with me," I said. "Neither delinquent nor otherwise." Flyer Guy held out a paper with highlighter marks. "You'll need to come to the association office on Tuesday to clear this up, or you can call. There's a $35 administrative fee to open the dispute." I sipped my coffee, then took the paper, folded it, and slid it into my folder with a chef's care. "I'm not coming to your clubhouse. I don't have a dispute to open because I'm not a member. You can slide all of this into a shredder and call it a day." "I'm so sorry," he said, and I actually believed that he was. "They told me to cover this street. Tell they to type county GIS map into a browser," I said. and tell them Sid said hi. He left and I went about my Saturday. 2 hours later, the oak leaf blazer returned. This time she brought reinforcements. A man in a tie and a man with a yardstick. "Good morning," she said like it was a courtroom opening. "I'm Marla. This is Griff, our community manager, and this is Talon, our compliance coordinator." Griff, community manager, had a briefcase and a practiced frown. Talon, compliance coordinator, had the look of a college kid who thought this was going to be a summer gig but accidentally stumbled into a personality cult. "We're here to resolve your membership status and your mounting fines," Griff intoned, like he was reading from a script. I smiled because some problems are better addressed with patience than volume. "I'm not a member," I repeated, "and your fines have the legal weight of paper snowflakes. You cannot impose obligations on properties that are not deed restricted. That's not how this country works," Marla laughed softly. "Oh, but your property is deed restricted. You're part of the neighborhood. The developer intended it. Everyone here knows it." I blinked slow. Show me a recorded covenant on my parcel number. Show me anything in the county recorder's system that says I'm under your association. I'll wait." Talon hugged his yardstick like a teddy bear. Griff opened his briefcase, pulled out a stack of papers with lots of bolded words, and handed me an unsigned welcome letter and a stapled packet labeled Proposed Annexation Area Phase 2. Proposed, not recorded, not enforceable. "Is this a joke?" I asked. "You can propose you own the moon. My deed and the map at the county say otherwise." Griff's frown deepened. "You've been assessed fees. You're in arrears. I'm authorized to offer you a payment plan. I'm authorized to offer you a tall glass of leave me alone," I said. "And for the record, you are trespassing. You are not my property managers. You're not my landlords. You can step off my porch." Marla's polite voice went sharp. "If you continue to deny your membership, we'll escalate. We are responsible for ensuring the community's uniformity and safety, and your behavior is combative." "Safety?" I asked. "From my blue house?" "From non-compliance spreading," Marla said with a straight face. I couldn't believe I was having a contagious paint color conversation on a Saturday. "All right," I said. "You've been warned. Your paperwork is not recorded anywhere. You have no authority here. Please leave my property." Marla made a show of putting her clipboard under her arm. "One last chance. We need your signature for the gate access roster and emergency contact form." "Gate access?" I asked, gesturing at the birds and the clouds and the free air. "There's no gate," Griff spoke up with the confidence of a baritone. "The association voted to install a gate for the safety of our residents. You'll need transponders." I laughed. I tried not to, but it bubbled out. "You're going to gate a public county road? Best of luck with that." "We've already consulted with legal counsel," Marla said, like she was reciting a protective spell. "Then your legal counsel needs new counsel," I said. That's when Marla called 911. She did it without drama, without raising her voice. She took out her phone, stepped off my porch, and in a calm, practiced tone said, "Yes, we have a resident refusing to comply with the association's legal directives. He's hostile and threatening us on his property. We need an officer." I stared at her. "You did not just call emergency services because I won't join your social club." Marla put her palm over the phone the way people do in movies. "We're the HOA," she hissed. "You're required to follow our rules." I didn't say anything. I went inside, grabbed my own phone, and punched record. Then I stepped back onto my porch, pointed the camera, and said, "For the record, you are trespassing. For the record, this is a civil matter. For the record, calling 911 for paperwork is a misuse of the system." Griff tried to step closer, but I put my hand up. "Step back. I don't consent to anything, and I'm not discussing anything else until the officers arrive, at which point I will explain this is a civil dispute outside your jurisdiction. You learn things when you own property and deal with the world. I learned patience the year I fought a billing error that tried to ruin my credit. I learned documentation is a shield. I learned that polite doesn't mean pliable, so I documented. When the cruiser rolled up in about 8 minutes because our county does not mess around with response times, I felt that twist in my gut. I respect law enforcement, and I also know how sideways a misunderstanding can go. I set my phone on a little tripod on a patio chair and hit live backup on my cloud camera app, then walked out with my hands visible, calm as a yoga teacher. 2 officers got out, one older, one young. The older one, a sergeant by the stripes, took us all in with a glance that said he'd seen worse on Thanksgiving. "All right," he said. "Who called?" "I did," Marla said, stepping forward. "We're the association board. We have a resident here refusing to comply, becoming aggressive, and attempting to obstruct our duties. The sergeant looked at me. I raised my hand slightly. I'm Sid. I'm not a member of their association. They're on my property. This is a civil dispute they escalated by calling emergency services. I've asked them to leave. The younger officer frowned. Are you within their subdivision boundary? No, I said. Their boundary ends at the creek. My parcel is 3 acres with a separate deed outside their plat. There are no recorded covenants on my title. I can show you a copy. Marla started up, but the sergeant put a hand up. Ma'am, let him finish. I pulled a manila folder from under my arm, because once you've been burned by paperwork, you carry copies like a southern grandma carries peppermints. Inside were my deed, the survey, and printed pages from the county GIS showing the plat lines. I also had their proposed annexation packet, which I held up between 2 fingers like it might stain. They keep delivering these, I said, unstamped by hand. They include threats of fines and an invitation to pay to open a dispute to prove I'm not obligated to them. The sergeant skimmed the papers with practiced speed. He asked the young officer to grab the radio and run my parcel number by dispatch to confirm recorded covenants. The younger officer nodded and stepped aside to do just that. Ma'am, the sergeant said to Marla, even if he were within your association, this would be a civil matter unless there's a criminal element like trespass, vandalism, or threats. We're here because you said he was hostile and threatening. Marla lifted her chin the way a sail lifts to catch wind. He is obstructing and escalating. He refused to provide identification. He recorded us. That's not a crime, the sergeant said, sounding tired. And on his property, he doesn't have to show you ID. Your job is to enforce the law, Griff snapped. Do your job. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. The sergeant looked at Griff a long moment, then turned to me. Sir, you've asked them to leave? I have, I said, multiple times. I consider their continued presence trespass. The younger officer returned. Dispatch says there are no recorded covenants on that parcel, he said, reading off a small notepad. It's outside the Creekview plat. The sergeant nodded once. He stepped onto my porch, not crossing a threshold, just coming close enough to speak in a normal voice. Sir, do you want to press trespass charges, or would you prefer we document and issue a warning? I considered. A part of me wanted to scorch the earth. A larger part of me wanted a paper trail a mile long. Let's start with a documented warning, I said. And I'd like an incident number. Marla sputtered. He's the one who's violating— Ma'am, the sergeant said, this isn't your jurisdiction. He turned to Griff and Talon. If you come back onto this property after being warned, you may be subject to arrest for trespass. If you have a civil dispute, you can pursue it through civil channels. But you may not use emergency services to resolve a policy disagreement. Talon looked like a kid who'd been told superheroes aren't real. Griff looked like a man whose golf game was about to suffer. Marla looked at me with a cool, flat stare that felt like a promise. The officers wrote their notes. The sergeant gave me a card with the incident number. Then, because he was thorough, he asked if I wanted a no trespass order issued. In our county, a homeowner can sign an affidavit with the sheriff's office and post a notice. Once served, it carries actual teeth. I said I'd like to do that on Monday. He said, good plan. Then he turned back to the trio and said in a voice that had probably ended a lot of bar fights, leave now. They left. The cruiser rolled away. The afternoon quieted to normal. A lawnmower 2 houses down, a dog thumping its tail on a fence. I stood on my porch for a minute, breathing. Then I walked inside, took the incident card to my little safe and put it inside with the property papers. I thought about calling a friend of mine, a residential real estate agent who'd once sat through 100 HOA meetings and came away with an allergy. But before I reached for my phone, I heard a thump outside. I stepped back onto the porch in time to see a little drone lift over my roofline, its 4 rotors whirring like angry mosquitoes. It hovered, rotated, and aimed its tiny eye toward my backyard. I stared up at it as disbelief turned to irritation, turned to something more solid. I pulled my phone out, snapped a few photos, and then I did what any stubborn homeowner with a legal streak would do. I started a paper war. I made 3 calls. The first was to the county recorder's office to double-check and print certified copies of my deed and the plat maps. The second was to the sheriff's non-emergency line to ask about filing a misuse of 911 report, because there are consequences for knowingly calling emergency services to harass someone. The third was to the county zoning office to inquire about unpermitted gate installations across public right-of-way, because if they were even half serious about that gate, someone was about to get a letter. On Monday, I took a personal day. I wore my most reasonable jacket. I carried a folder so fat with documents it could have served as self-defense. At the sheriff's office, a clerk named Lottie listened carefully while I explained the 911 call. I played the recording where Marla said they needed an officer because I wouldn't comply with legal directives. I showed the incident card. Lottie's eyebrows climbed. She pulled up the call logs, found the transcript, and frowned. If they knowingly misrepresented an emergency to get an officer out there, that's misuse, she said. And if they keep doing it, it can become harassment. Do you want to add a note requesting extra patrols? I did. She added it. She printed a receipt. Then she sent me down the hall to sign the no trespass affidavit. I signed it with a careful hand and the kind of satisfaction that tastes like adding a lock to a door. At the county recorder, I paid for certified copies and asked the clerk to help me gather the recorded documents for Creekview's plat and covenants. The clerk, a person who looked like they'd seen every kind of drama disguised as paperwork, printed them with quiet efficiency. We laid them side by side. The map lines made it plain. The creek was my moat. Their covenants stopped at water's edge. At zoning, I asked to speak to whoever handled right-of-way permits. A man with a calm voice and a tie that had seen better days flipped through his forms and said, "No one has applied to gate that road." And they can't. It's public. They'd have to petition to privatize it. That's a process. And I'll add, we don't privatize county roads just so associations can play toll booth. I left with a stack of paper and a feeling I can only describe as armed with facts. That evening, I put up a camera on my front porch facing the street and another in the backyard angled toward the creek. I posted a polite sign by my driveway that said, "Private property, no soliciting, no trespass." I also posted a tiny sign under my mailbox with a smiley face that said, "Certified neutral color, sunshine rust." That last one was just for me. For 2 weeks, things were quiet. Then on a Thursday at 6:42 a.m., a city truck rolled up to the corner by the Creekview entrance. 2 men hopped out and began marking the pavement with spray paint. An hour later, another truck brought a post hole digger. I watched from my driveway, coffee in hand, as they set posts in concrete right up near the mouth of the public road. A pair of men in polos hovered nearby, pointing, lips tight. I walked over to the workers. "Morning," I said, easy. "What are you putting in?" "Signage and decorative posts," one of them said, glancing at the polo duo. "We're contractors. We just do what the order says." The sign that went into the ground by noon said, "Private road, residents only." They mounted it in a way that suggested permanence. They did it on a county right-of-way. I made another call to zoning. The calm-voiced tie-wearer sounded less calm. "We did not approve that," he said. "We'll send someone." That afternoon, a county truck showed up and a woman in a hard hat took photos, made some calls, and then politely asked the contractor to pull the posts up. The contractor looked at the polo duo. The polo duo called someone. 10 minutes later, the contractor shrugged, sighed, and started yanking the posts back out of the concrete while the county woman supervised. I watched the whole thing like it was a midday movie. That night, a letter appeared tucked in my screen door. It was from Creekview Community Association on oak leaf letterhead, unsigned, stating that due to my continuing disregard for community standards, I would be subject to a lien on my property for unpaid dues and fines. For extra flair, they attached a notice of intent to lien with a lot of legal words that read like someone skimmed a blog and played Mad Libs. I sat down at my kitchen table, spread the letter and my certified deed copies out like tarot cards, and laughed in a way that felt like a release valve hissing open. Then I opened my laptop and typed up a response. It was not insulting, not snarky, not even unkind. It was precise. It cited the parcel number, the recorder's book, and page numbers for Creekview's covenants. The state statute that says a lien can only be recorded based on a valid contract or recorded covenant, and the penalties for recording a fraudulent instrument with the county. I ended it with one line. Any attempt to record a lien against my property by your association will be met with immediate legal action, including a claim for quiet title and damages under state statute, and your board members may be personally liable. Then I printed it. Then I mailed it, certified. 3 days later, Marla returned. This time, she came alone and without the blazer. She wore a sweatshirt like she was trying to look less official. She stayed at the bottom of my steps. "We need to talk," she said. "No," I said, "we don't, but we can, on the record." She looked tired for the first time since I met her. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." "I'm making it as hard as the law intended," I said. "Everyone else is going along," she said, and it sounded less like triumph and more like confession. "That's not my problem," I said. Your problem is you've been acting like a quasi-government without jurisdiction. You sent people onto my property. You called 911. You tried to put up a gate on a county road. You threatened a lien you can't lawfully record. I'm not your resident and I'm not your revenue stream. Her eyes flicked to my camera. Are you recording? Yes, I said. She sighed. Then I'll be brief. If you insist on this path, you'll find out we have resources. If you insist on yours, I said, you'll find out I have time. She left without another word. She looked smaller walking away than she had striding up. The next morning, my drone returned. This time, I anticipated it. It buzzed over my backyard, skimming just above the tree line, tilting its eye at my back porch where I'd just set down a plate of pancakes and a ridiculous amount of maple syrup. I lifted my phone and snapped photos again. Then I did something quietly satisfying. I stood up, walked calmly to my fence line, and held up a laminated printout of our state's privacy statute regarding drones and private property airspace at low altitude, where people have a reasonable expectation of privacy. I didn't need to do it for the drone. I did it for me. When it hovered, I raised my laminated sheet higher like a referee with a penalty card. Then, it zipped away. That afternoon, I filed a complaint with the county about drone harassment. I included my photos. I included a note that said if they identified the operator, I was prepared to pursue a civil claim under the state's privacy law and nuisance doctrine. It wasn't bluster, it was the point. At this point, a side plot slid into the main reel. My immediate next-door neighbor, a retired music teacher named Edris who grows tomatoes like medals in his backyard, knocked on my door with a loaf of fresh bread wrapped in a dish towel. He hadn't been especially chatty in the past, but he knew I kept an eye on his place when he visited his daughter in the next state. I heard the commotion, he said, and I know they've been leaving flyers. He gestured with his chin at the creek. They came to my door and told me I'd be fined if I didn't cut down my apple tree. Said it didn't meet height standards for the sightline. I've had that tree for 23 years. My wife planted it. They didn't put that in an envelope. They said it to my face. I felt something heavy settle in my chest that wasn't about me anymore. Edris's eyes were wet and angry in a quiet way. You know you're not in their group, right? I asked. I know, he said. They said all roads in this area are part of their responsibilities. They make it sound official. I sat him down, cut 2 slices of his bread and pulled out my folder. We went through the maps, the law, the limits. He nodded, absorbing. I don't like confrontation, he said, but I don't like bullies. I'm right there with you, I said, and if you want, I'll help you write letters. We did. Over the next week, I became a one-man stationery shop. I helped Edris draft a polite cease and desist, demanding they stop contacting him. I helped a young couple across the way, Dina and Owen, who had gotten a violation for their swing set being visible above their fence. They'd been saving for months to put that swing up for their twins. They aren't in Creekview either. They were shocked they even had to defend it. We didn't send the letters as a group, we sent them individually, certified from different post offices on different days. And every letter had the same spine: recorded facts, statute citations, an invitation to check the county map, and a firm notice that continued contact would be treated as harassment and trespass. The association responded in 3 different ways: silence, more flyers, and, on a Tuesday afternoon that would become the day I started keeping a ledger, another 911 call. This time, the caller claimed I had verbally threatened a board member and was brandishing tools. The officers who showed up were different. They approached with caution, hands on belts but not weapons. I stayed on my porch, phone recording, hands visible, voice steady. I explained. I produced the incident card from before. I asked them to check the call logs. I offered them coffee because I am who I am. The officers stood there a long moment, listening, and then one asked, almost conversational, "Do you know if anyone in your area has been calling in false reports? We've had a flare-up this month." I said I had recordings and names. He nodded. "We'll document," he said. "If this is a misuse pattern, it'll be dealt with." After they left, I did what I should have done from the start. I bought a notebook that afternoon, a cheap composition book with a black and white cover, and wrote, Creekview HOA, Contacts, Incidents, on the first page in careful block letters. It felt a little obsessive, a little like something you do after watching a docuseries, but it also felt like armor. Every call, every flyer, every drone pass, every conversation, time, date, what was said, who was present. I printed screenshots from my cameras and taped them in like a scrapbook made by a municipal clerk. I had no interest in being the neighborhood crank. I had deep interest in being the person with receipts. It all tilted from strange to serious when I got a knock at my door at 9:17 p.m. on a Wednesday, late enough to be odd. I opened it to find a young woman in a hoodie and jeans holding a form letter and looking mortified. "They sent me," she said before I could ask. "They told me to tape this to your garage." "Who's they?" I asked, though I knew. "The association," she said. "I'm the one who cleans the clubhouse on weekends. They said they'd waive my late fees if I did some rounds." Her eyes were soft with the tiredness of someone juggling too many jobs. I took the letter off her hands. I wanted to be angry. I wasn't at her. "You don't have to trespass for them," I said. "You can tell them someone called the sheriff. You can say you won't be part of it." She looked relieved, like a weight had been lifted, and a little afraid, like a different one had been set down. "Will I get in trouble? If they try to retaliate, come back," I said. "We'll figure it out." After she left, I sat down with my ledger and added a new section. Witnesses, involved third parties. Names, if they offered them. Descriptions, if they didn't. Not to harass, to protect. 2 days later, I got a letter, actual mail this time, stamped and sent, from a law office representing Creekview Community Association. It was full of thunder and light, references to compelling performance, equitable estoppel, benefits of maintenance accepted, and constructive membership. It argued that by living in proximity to their common areas and enjoying the paved roads, I had accepted benefits and was bound. It suggested they would seek injunctive relief and attorney's fees. I read it twice, slowly, like you read a menu in a restaurant you can't afford. My first reaction was a low, incredulous whistle. My second reaction was to call someone who actually knew how to throw sunlight on this. A property attorney who once helped me untangle a fence line dispute when a previous neighbor tried to move a post to make mowing easier. He's meticulous, honest, and allergic to nonsense. I emailed my attorney scans, deeds, plats, incident numbers, and the law office letter. He replied with 6 words that tasted like black coffee. "You're not bound. They know it." On the phone, he walked me through it. Equitable estoppel doesn't conjure covenants from thin air. Public roads belong to the county, and no court will force an unaffiliated parcel into an association without recorded instruments. In our state, threatening a knowingly invalid lien can boomerang into damages. "So what do?" I asked. "We make them stop and make them remember the cost of not stopping." He listed options: a civil harassment injunction, a demand letter for tortious interference and abuse of process, and if they recorded anything against my title, a quiet title action with damages. Also, report them to the agency that regulates associations and copy their insurer. "They carry directors' and officers' insurance," he said. "They'll care when their carrier cares." I signed his engagement letter and he drafted a demand that read like a weather report. Facts, incident numbers, statutes, an invitation to correct and apologize, and a deadline. We mailed it certified to the registered agent and to each board member's home. Waiting wasn't restful. I kept my porch camera rolling, my ledger open, and a new no trespass notice posted with the sheriff's signature. More stories walked up my steps. Lacey, a single mom, said they ordered down her laundry line because it lowers property values. Hale, a widower, got a notice calling his wheelchair ramp aesthetically unpleasing. The ledger became a binder, the binder a stack, and the stack went to the county attorney describing misuse of emergency services and attempted authority outside jurisdiction. Their lawyer finally responded enforcement would be paused for disputed parcels. No apology. Then a knock on a rain-glossed Saturday. "I'm Investigator Gallo with the county attorney's office." She set a recorder on my table and asked for the story. I poured coffee and gave her everything. Fines with no postage, the delinquent sign, the yardstick trio, the 911 call, the drone, the private road stunt, the second 911 call. "Patterns matter. Paperwork matters," she said. She asked for other witnesses. By noon, neighbors sat at my table giving statements and handing over copies of notices, permits, and receipts. Jory, the clubhouse cleaner, showed screenshots that read, "Send a message, teach him a lesson, and call and report he's threatening." "Your attorney should move on injunctive relief," Gallo said. "He's already drafting," I told her. "He filed for a temporary restraining order Monday, naming the association and the board, Marla, Griff, Troy, and Amina, with exhibits. Call transcripts, the zoning directive to yank signs from the right-of-way, my no trespass affidavit, the lien threat, neighbors' statements, and screenshots." A judge signed the TRO that day and set a hearing. They slowed but didn't stop, a drone at a higher altitude. The county warned them about 911 misuse. The sheriff assigned a liaison. At the hearing, the judge was steady as bedrock. Our side was simple. I live outside their plat. They tried to enforce on me. They called 911 for leverage. They installed signs illegally. They flew a drone. They threatened unlawful liens. Their side asked for more time. No, the judge said. You've had 10 days. He asked the question that mattered. Do you have recorded covenants on his parcel? They didn't. Then explain the 911 calls, he said. Silence did the explaining. He granted a 1-year harassment order. No contact, no surveillance, no misrepresentation, no notices, plus a written retraction of the lien threat copied to the county recorder. Quiet followed. Their lawyer wrote to regret any confusion, confirmed my parcel wasn't bound, and enclosed the lien retraction. The county charged Marla for the second 911 call. She pled no contest and paid a fine. Jory quit and landed a better job. Lacey strung a second line. A member brought a drying rack. Hale added a handrail with help from a kid who'd once glared from an enforcement drive. The drone kid took a privacy course and learned to keep altitude. The recall succeeded. New board, new letters. We do not govern you. A settlement followed. Fees reimbursed, apologies, volunteer training, no annexation without consent and recording, and a 3-year bar on Marla serving or contacting me. The binder lives on a shelf now. Peace truly looks good on the block. If a clipboard shows up again, I've got a pen, a camera, and neighbors who know the map. Friends, thank you. See you soon.